Veena from Pata Cake, the channel that's about baking and much more. Here's where you'll find quick and tasty recipes for new cooks and those with less time to spend in the kitchen. Okay then, let's get cracking with today's recipe. Welcome back. Today I'm delighted to present something that for me is the best summertime treat. Kulfi, the Indian version of ice cream, you could say. Kulfi is basically milk that has been reduced, thickened, sweetened and then frozen. As many of you may know, the traditional way of reducing and thickening milk calls for a lot of time and patience. But we are going to do this the smart way. So now let's see exactly how we are going to make not one but two delicious kinds of kulfi, easily, quickly and smartly, right here at Pata Cake. To make Malai Kulfi, we'll need half a liter plus half a cup of full cream milk, half a teaspoon of ground cardamom, 4 tablespoons of milk powder, 6 tablespoons of sugar, 1.5 tablespoons of finely chopped almonds, and 1.5 tablespoons of our special ingredient, whole wheat flour. Let's make a smooth, lump-free slurry by mixing this with a quarter cup of milk. Wheat flour will be one of the thickening agents in this recipe. When I first used wheat flour instead of the usual corn flour to thicken the milk, I was amazed at how tastier it made the kulfi. Now let's make a smooth slurry with the milk powder and around a quarter cup of milk. The milk powder is the second ingredient we'll be using to thicken the milk and give a richer taste to the kulfi. By adding milk powder to the milk, we'll cut down on the time needed to evaporate and thicken it. And that's why we'll need to simmer the milk for just 5 minutes instead of a good 20 minutes or so. I'm using a non-stick pan to heat the milk to reduce the chances of it sticking to the bottom and getting burnt as it thickens. I've set the heat to medium and will begin by adding in the ground cardamom and the milk powder slurry. Let's stir the milk well and bring it to a boil. We'll now add in the sugar. As we stir the milk, we'll need to scrape the sides of the pan and mix the scraped milk cream back into the milk. When the milk starts boiling again, we'll reduce the heat and set it to low and let the milk simmer for around 5 minutes and reduce a little. Let's give it a stir occasionally, remembering to scrape the sides of the pan. Now let's slowly pour in the wheat flour slurry, stirring continuously to avoid the formation of lumps and maintaining the heat on low. As the kulfi mix starts boiling, it will begin to thicken. At this stage, we have to stir the mix constantly. After around 3 minutes, the mix will be thick enough to coat the back of the spatula. We'll now mix in the chopped almonds, continue heating the mix for another minute, and then turn off the heat. We'll cover the Malai Kulfi mix and give it a gentle stir now and then till it cools to room temperature. To make the Kesar Pista Kulfi, we'll need half a liter plus half a cup of full cream milk, half a teaspoon of ground cardamom, a large pinch of crumbled saffron or Kesar, 6 tablespoons of sugar, 4 tablespoons of milk powder, 1.5 tablespoons of finely chopped pistachios, and 2 tablespoons of another special thickening ingredient, rice flour. Like wheat flour, rice flour too gives a creamy texture to the kulfi. Let's add 2 teaspoons of plain water to the saffron, swirl it around and keep it aside to let it steep in the water for a while. Like before, we'll now prepare a smooth slurry with the milk powder and around a quarter cup of milk. Next, let's make a smooth slurry with the rice flour and a quarter cup of milk. This time, I'm using a thick-walled wok to prepare the kulfi mix. With the heat set to medium, I'll now add the ground cardamom and the milk slurry. Let's give everything a good stir. When the milk comes to a boil, it'll be time to mix in the sugar. Once the milk starts boiling again, we'll have to lower the heat and let the milk simmer for 5 minutes till it reduces a little, and then stir in the saffron. Next, let's slowly stir the rice flour slurry into the reduced milk, and with the heat still on low and constant stirring, continue heating it till it comes to a boil and starts thickening. We'll keep on stirring the kulfi mix for around 3 minutes till it reaches the right thickness. Now let's mix in the chopped pistachios, continue heating the mix for another minute and then take it off the heat. I'll cover the Kesar Pista kulfi mix and stir it occasionally till it cools to room temperature. After around 40 minutes, both the kulfi mixes have cooled completely. At this stage, if you find the mix is too thick, add a little room temperature milk to it, a tablespoon at a time, to adjust its consistency. Let's whisk each of the mixes for a couple of minutes to ensure they're smooth and creamy. A hand whisk will do the job. We don't need to use a mixer or blender to do this like you would for an ice cream mix, which would need to be light and foamy. I'm going to transfer the Kesar Pista mix to a measuring jug to make it easier to pour it into the molds. I had already transferred the Malai Kulfi mix from the non-stick pan to this small vessel that has a lip for easy pouring. Let's whisk this too. For setting the kulfi, you could use small glasses or paper cups as molds, or steel, aluminium or plastic containers with well-fitting lids. Or else, if you have one, you could use a kulfi mold rack like this one. Each lid has a sort of stick attached to it. You could also use individual kulfi molds like this one with a lid that can be screwed on. Okay, now let's start filling the molds. On second thoughts, I had decided to pour the Kesar Pista mix back into the steel wok. I felt the spout of the measuring jug was too broad for these small cone-shaped molds. So I'm using a spoon to fill these like I usually do. Remember to keep a gap of around a quarter inch above the level of the mix, as it will expand slightly on freezing. I'll divide the rest of the kulfi mix between this glass and a paper cup. Now on to the Malai Kulfi mix. I'll first fill the remaining 4 conical molds and then divide the remaining mix between the steel container and a paper cup. Let's put the lids back on the cone-shaped molds. The glass and paper cups will have to be covered with aluminium foil. Now in this steel container, there'll be a large gap between the top of the kulfi mix and the lid. So I'm going to cover its mouth with a thin sheet of plastic, push the plastic down a little to reduce the empty space above the kulfi mix, and then put the lid on. We'll have to freeze the kulfi for 7 to 8 hours, or preferably overnight. Our kulfi has now set, so let's check it out. In the case of the glass or the paper cups, you could have the kulfi directly out of them. However, steel or plastic containers and the kulfi molds will have to be first kept dipped in room temperature water for around 30 seconds, like this, before taking the kulfi out of them. Try to gently turn or twist the handle of the kulfi mold lid and then carefully pull the kulfi out. Let's garnish these with some chopped pistachios and almonds. I've garnished the kulfi in the glass and paper cup too with chopped nuts. You could now just dig in with a spoon and enjoy your kulfi. Let's demold some more kulfi cones. Demolding kulfi from a metal or plastic container could be tricky. Luckily, this is a thin slab, so we can just run a knife around the edge at the same time trying to loosen it from the bottom and then take it out. A better way, however, would be to line the container with some cling film before pouring the kulfi mix into it. This would make the demolding much easier. Let's add a sprinkling of chopped nuts to this kulfi slab. It sure was a challenge to shoot this video in the summer heat, especially after unmolding the kulfi. I had to act fast, but I tried my best to give you as many tips as possible. So there you have it. 2 amazingly easy peasy recipes for delicious, creamy Malai and Kesar Pista kulfi. Do make these refreshing treats for your family this summer. But if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments box. I'll answer them as soon as possible. Or just give me some feedback. That would be great too. Hope you enjoyed today's video. And do stop by again for yet another quick and tasty recipe. Till then, take care. Happy cooking!